All right, diving in today. And this one, I think, might resonate with a lot of us out there. Sometimes you just get lost in your thoughts, right? But we're talking about something a little more specific, a little more intense than that. It's called maladaptive daydreaming. And we've got a ton of fascinating research to unpack on it.
Yeah, everyone daydreams,
Yeah.
right? It's normal. Planning your day, getting creative, just letting your mind wander a bit, de-stressing. That's all good. It's when it takes over, when it starts interfering with, actually living your life, that's when we cross the line into maladaptive.
So what does that actually look like? What are the signs someone might be dealing with this and not just, a really active imagination?
Well, think about this. These folks are spending, serious time in these daydreams, hours every day. Some studies suggest an average of 4.5 hours, just totally immersed. And these aren't just like fleeting thoughts. These are elaborate fantasies, detailed worlds with characters and storylines that like evolve over time. It's almost like they're directing their own personal TV series in their heads. And they feel this like intense urge to keep going, to stay in that world. And if something pulls them out, it's really distressing.
So it's like an addiction almost.
Kinda, yeah. The
Yeah.
pull, the urge, the difficulty stopping, it's all there. But
Yeah.
what sets it apart from, say, psychosis is that they are aware it's not real. They know they're daydreaming.
It's so interesting. So what actually triggers these intense daydreams? What gets them started?
All sorts of things. It could be real life events, something that happens, or even just sensory stuff. Music is a big one for a lot of people. Even just internal things, thoughts, feelings, they can all be triggers. And it's not just mental, there's often a physical component too. You'll see people pacing or making hand gestures, even facial expressions change.
Wow. So they're really like living it even physically.
Hmm.
So how do we know if our daydreaming is normal or if it's becoming this maladaptive thing? Where's the line?
It's a good question. Really, it comes down to like a few things. How often does it happen? How vivid is it? How much are you emotionally invested? And importantly, how much control do you have? Can you stop when you want to? If it's constantly interfering with your life, with work, relationships, even just basic functioning, and you feel powerless to stop it, that's a big red flag.
Yeah.
And, researchers are actually trying to develop more formal diagnostic criteria for this, basically looking at, is the fantasy world taking over? Is it causing distress?
That makes sense. Now, a lot of times these kind of things are connected to other issues, right? Other mental health experiences. What are we seeing in the research here?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very common to see maladaptive daydreaming alongside other things.
Hmm.
Anxiety disorders, it can be an escape from that anxiety. OCD, sometimes it's like a mental compulsion, a way to, try to control things.
Yeah.
ADHD, maybe it's seeking stimulation or avoiding boredom. And depression, sometimes it's a way to cope with those negative emotions. Trauma is a big one too. Stressful life events, especially in childhood, we see a strong connection there. Over half of individuals who report maladaptive daydreaming also report having experienced, adverse childhood experiences, like
Oh,
really tough stuff.
that's huge, over half. So things like abuse, neglect, things like that.
Exactly. And even things like, bullying, loneliness, just feeling different. Those can contribute too. And there's even some early research starting to look at, potential differences in brain function,
Hmm.
specifically in areas related to, what we call executive function, like planning and managing tasks and emotional regulation. Kind of similar to what we see in ADHD, actually.
Oh, wow, that's fascinating. So we've talked about, what this is, what causes it, but what about solutions? If someone out there is thinking, yeah, this is me, this is what I'm dealing with, where do they even begin?
Well, the good news is there are things that can help. CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, can be really effective. The idea is to, figure out what triggers the daydreams, challenge the thoughts that feed them, and develop healthier coping strategies, like learning to set limits on the daydreaming time, for example. And therapists are even starting to adapt techniques like exposure and response prevention, which is usually used for OCD, to address that compulsive aspect of maladaptive daydreaming.
So sort of like gradually exposing yourself to the triggers and learning to resist the urge to escape into the daydream.
Exactly. And beyond that, there are a lot of like mindfulness and relaxation techniques that can be really helpful. Simple things like breathing exercises, body scans, meditation. These can help you stay grounded in the present moment, reduce the intensity of those urges. Keeping a journal to track your daydreams can be helpful too. And identifying and avoiding your triggers, that's a big one.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, kind of taking control, becoming aware of what sets it off. What about just like general lifestyle stuff? Does that play a role?
Absolutely. Getting enough sleep, managing fatigue, that can make a huge difference. Eating well, regular exercise, those are important for overall mental health anyway, but they can definitely impact maladaptive daydreaming too. And trying to engage in, real-world activities that you enjoy, that you find stimulating and engaging, that can help too.
So finding things that like grab your attention in the real world kind of compete with those daydreams.
Exactly. And it's important to remember, you don't have to go through this alone. There's support out there.
Right. So when should someone consider like seeking professional help for this? When does it cross that line?
If it's really impacting your life, your work, your relationships, your ability to just function day to day, and you've tried things on your own and it's not enough, that's definitely a time to reach out. A therapist who specializes in, anxiety disorders, OCD, ADHD, trauma, those can all be really helpful. And don't forget about online therapy. That can be a great option
Yeah.
too. It makes it much easier to find someone who specializes in this, no matter where you live.
That's a good point. Now, what about medication? Does that play a role in treating maladaptive daydreaming?
So typically, medication isn't the first line of treatment for the daydreaming itself. But if there are other conditions present, like anxiety, depression, those might be treated with medication, and that can indirectly help with the daydreaming. There's not a ton of research on specific medications for maladaptive daydreaming, but there's some limited evidence that fluvoxamine, which is an SSRI, might be helpful.
Okay, so something to talk to a doctor about for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Always consult with a psychiatrist, especially because, in some cases, stimulants for ADHD can actually worsen daydreaming, kind of counterintuitive. So it's important to have that conversation.
Really emphasizes the need for, professional guidance, finding someone who knows this stuff. What about like connecting with others who understand, who are going through the same thing?
Oh, that can be so helpful. There are support groups out there, both online and in person, specifically for maladaptive daydreaming. And even groups for related conditions like anxiety, OCD, those can provide a lot of support too. And there are online forums, websites like ICMDR, ISMD, lots of resources out there, even books and podcasts dedicated to this topic.
So people are talking about it, people are sharing their experiences, and finding that connection, that understanding, it can make a big difference.
I bet. So, we started this deep dive talking about how, we all daydream, it's normal. But this is clearly more than just a quirky habit, right? This can seriously impact someone's life.
Yeah, no question. It can interfere with focus, concentration, make it hard to be productive at work or school. It can lead to social isolation, problems with sleep, feelings of shame and guilt. It's a real struggle for a lot of people.
Yeah. So, as we wrap up here, what are some key takeaways for our listeners? What do we really want them to remember about all of this? I think the biggest thing is just awareness. Knowing that this is a thing, that it's not just you, that there's a name for it, that can be really empowering. And understanding those underlying factors, that can help too. Because once you know what you're dealing with, you can start to find the right strategies.
Right. And those strategies can range from, like you said, therapy, medication, even just lifestyle changes, mindfulness. There's a lot out there.
Exactly. And some simple things that folks can start doing today, even before they seek professional help, like trying to prioritize tasks, setting realistic goals, using time management techniques, building a structured routine can be really helpful too. And leaning on your support system, talking to loved ones, that can make a huge difference.
Yeah, don't underestimate the power of connection. Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive. I feel like I learned a lot, and hopefully our listeners did too.
Yeah, me too. And, as a final thought, I would just encourage everyone listening to think about the purpose your own mind wandering serves. When is it helpful? When does it feel like it might be holding you back? That kind of self-reflection can be really valuable. And if you're concerned, don't hesitate to explore those resources we talked about.
Great advice. Thanks for joining us today. This was a great conversation.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.